Okay, what's up, everybody? Let's just give things a few moments to load in here and make sure everything is up and running. You know me, I don't have an on-site producer or anything like that, so I got to just make sure that it's on before. Okay, so we're on the YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Good to see you. I hope you are well. Are we on the Rockfin? We are. We are on the Rockfin, and Twitter is up as well. So we are locked and loaded. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. Good evening. Good happy Monday. Fun band. And this is that time of the month where we have a segment dedicated to MMT. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. This is the interview show for the week. And shout out to everyone who checked out the first episode of Expatriate. That's a new series happening under the Get Your News On with Ron banner. It's all about information to leave the United States, passports, visas, documentation, citizenship, that sort of thing. We had our pilot episode yesterday. Shout out to everyone who checked that out and who has been emailing me suggestions for future episodes. This could be a really fun series. I'm excited about it. But today we are talking MMT, which of course stands for Modern Monetary Theory. And we got some interesting veils of connection today. We're going to be talking about the Kansas City roommate ban, which if you're not familiar with that, we'll be going through it briefly, and how that connects to MMT, as well as the novels 1984 and Brave New World and how they connect to modern monetary theory. But before we go any further, I'm going to bring in my monthly MMT dealer. He's always here when it's MMT time of the month. Please welcome back to the show. Not the bad one, the good one, Mr. Jeff Epstein. Jeff, what's up, buddy?
How you doing? MMT time. I don't know. That's
MMT time. You like that?
Yeah, MMT time.
You know what, man? I'm gonna write that down. Maybe that should be our thing.
Gotta come up with a new name.
Tea time.
And then tea time.
And then we can have like a little teacup or something in the thumbnail. All right, Joe.
Good to see you. Last time I
you later. I'm making a note for Joe. MMT time. Make a mental note of it. See if there's. I mean, we could go the golf route with it, Jeff, but I don't really care for golf
no.
much.
Tea time.
Yeah, you don't like it either. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you.
But tea, I love tea. I love to drink tea. So we could just have a little MMT bag.
With a oh, okay, that too. I was thinking of the delicate china saucer and cup and all that.
So how are you?
I'm good. Last time I saw you, we sang. That was nice.
We did. That was really fun. Jeff was at the show in New York, and we did the theme song. Because for those of you who don't know, on the Get Your News On with Ron theme song, that lovely high harmony is Jeff. He's a very talented vocalist, and so we did the song live in New York City. That was fun, man. That was a fun night.
It was nice, and it was nice to meet Krish. He was that was very nice talking with him, and accidentally seeing you beforehand. And yeah, it was a nice night. Great crowd.
Yeah, man. So let's get into this month's topic. So MMT, which of course stands for Modern Monetary Theory. We always start every episode kind of giving a brief snapshot of what MMT is. And MMT is basically the economic truth that we are a currency creator. We, being the United States, pretty much create our own currency. So the whole idea of we can't afford it is kind of just a myth. They always have an unlimited checkbook when it comes to Wall Street, when it comes to the war machine, but never for regular people. In reality, you could create your money responsibly, your currency responsibly, so that you can prevent inflation or minimize it. And we just straight up choose not to do it. We do it for the powerful, but not for regular people. MMT is kind of breaking down those economic myths that you're taught throughout your entire life of rugged neoliberalism. Jeff, what would you like to add to that?
That was good beginning. I would say that modern monetary theory, modern money theory, MMT, is simply how things actually work. And it's pretty clear. I mean, it really feels correct. And what it shows is that when someone says, we can't afford it, all it means is I'm not going to vote for it. And therefore, the problem is not how you're going to pay for it and who you're going to get taxes from. The problem is that we have people who simply are choosing not to vote for what we desperately need. And so even though it may be impossible to get those things done, you and I, as understanding how the economy really works, we know what the real problem is, and we're not wasting our time on these fake problems.
Right on. So now this has been an interesting story in general, and you sent this to me and how it connects to MMT. But first, let's kind of tell people what's going on here. This is really interesting. This happened a little while ago in Kansas City. Kansas City voted unanimously to ban co-living rentals, effectively
Unanimously, like
making
8-1, 8-0.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
8-0. They're making roommates illegal in some zoning districts. So let's see the details here. A city in Kansas has banned co-living, effectively making it legal to have a group of unrelated roommates split the cost. It was an 8-0 vote, as Jeff pointed out. Now here's the fun part. You're allowed to do it if you're related, but if you have up to one unrelated person, that counts as just an unrelated household. So
Correct.
if you have like four cousins, and then one of them has a buddy,
And all of you
shit,
are breaking the
we
law.
don't qualify anymore. Now
Yeah.
all of us are not related. What a bizarre. Why?
It's
I
horrible.
saw headlines of this, and I was just like, why are you? This is just. I mean, well, we know why. This is just a blatant attack on poor people, and honestly, not even just poor, just regular people. Most people have roommates. I mean,
rents are going up extraordinarily, and costs are going up. But our wages and our rights and our conditions are not. And so this is one reasonable way for people to deal with that kind of a thing, and they're just turning the screws, ever so slowly in every single direction, making it impossible to exist.
So how does this connect to MMT?
It only connects in the fact that when the horrible people are in control of the levers of power and we are not anywhere near the levers of power, these unbelievably creative, disgusting, horrible things can happen. Roe versus Wade, this, Assange and all the Donziger and the persecuting journalism and all, when the bad people are in front of the levers of power, creatively horrible things happen, and these are simply examples of those things. So that's really, and not understanding how things work is how we allow these people to get in front of the levers of power, and how we are not starting the real process of gathering together to get them out. That's really the only connection that I see it. Just creative horribleness.
Yeah. So basically, terrible people get into power. They do these terrible things, and there's no reason for it. And when you point out those truths, that it's like there's no reason for it to be this way, people kind of point the finger at you, and they call you naive, and they're like, well, this is the way it's got to be because of XYZ. And usually they throw out some basic, some Reaganomics bullshit, really. I mean, that's usually what they throw out. They'll be like, well, supply and demand and this and that, to bring it back to MMT.
It's unfortunate but necessary that these horrible things have to happen.
It's unfortunate but necessary. And the reason is because, well, we have to have some people starve, right? Otherwise, we couldn't eat. No. Where is that written down? Where is it written down? Where the best that I've ever seen, not the best, but you know what I mean, is when people are justifying our behavior on the world stage, our endless war economy. And they justify that because they're like, well, someone's got to just keep the world in check. Like, they make it out. If there wasn't some entity bombing the freaking planet the way the United States does, there would just be chaos everywhere. What are you basing this off of? Most people in the world just want to be left the hell alone and just live their lives. Like, where is it written that if there's not some world's bully brutalizing the planet for the profits of oil companies and weapons manufacturers and the corporate elite, that there would just be chaos everywhere and it'd be raining cats and dogs? None of that would happen. We don't need a world bully. Just like we don't need to brutalize people's housing situations in Kansas City for no reason. We don't need to have anyone go hungry. We don't need to say we can't afford this for anything. But again, you have the worst of us in power because of the way the system's rigged.
Two things you just reminded me of. Number one, this goes back to when they say we can't afford this, they simply mean I'm not going to vote for it. And when they say how are you going to pay for it, it means you can't make me vote for this. That's what they're saying. And it's the same thing with Roe versus Wade. It's like these horrible things, the rent thing that we were just talking about. They're choosing to do it. They're choosing to do it. They're voting to do it. And Roe versus Wade, I sent you a picture where all four of the recent conservative judges that have been appointed all said, while in testimony, for their confirmation hearing, whatever, said Roe versus Wade is law. It is codified into law. There is good precedence for it. And that was accurate at the time that they said it. because they weren't at the levers of power. Because now that they're at the levers of power, they control the law. And so since the law from their point of view is now a choice, and now they get to change that law. So it's the changing of the rules when you're at the levers of power is a choice. It's a vote. And so all of these things are just representative of their choices. And we're not going to do anything until we get people who make different choices.
Well, and especially using them as an example. I mean, the Supreme Court is such a sham and such an insult to the very concept of law, because all they do is just interpret the law to fit their political dogma. That's what they do. That's why it's used as a political football to intimidate voters. It's a total scam. It's an absolute total scam. I'm not saying that it's not a powerless total scam. It's a very powerful total scam, but it's a total scam nonetheless. And the best was, I mean, I think it was Clarence Thomas, maybe. I forget which way, but they basically said, we won't be bullied into making decisions. And it's like, okay, we interpret the law to fit our religious dogma or political dogma or whatever else. And quite frankly, we shouldn't even care about public opinion either. That's what you're saying.
We won't be bullied into not bullying you.
Exactly. We won't be bullied into not bullying you. And and people fall for this shit, Jeff. They fall for this. And that's, I mean,
I can destroy your lives. I can go into your womb, but you don't go to my front yard and protest. That's uncivil.
Yes. And people fall for this. People fall for this. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. You can't bully me into not bullying you. And when I say we can't afford it, what that really means is I'm not going to vote for this. And you can't make me vote.
You can't make me vote for it. Is how are you going to put when someone says in a federal context, national context, how are you going to pay for it? Change that always to how are you going to make me vote for it? When someone says in the national context, we can't afford it, change that always to I will not vote for it. Period. That always works.
God, dude, I should be. We got to take notes today. I mean,
that's recorded, right?
It's recorded. I'll tweet that out later to promote the episode.
You make me feel smart, Ron. I love it.
Say
I love it.
Can't pay means I won't vote for it.
How are you going to, how we can't afford it means I won't vote for it. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it means how are you going to make me vote for it? You're powerless. And it's just basically a dog whistle or whatever you call it. It's basically just a subtle way of saying, an indirect way of saying, I'm powerful. You're not. Sit down and shut up.
I mean, here I thought we probably peaked at MMT time, because that's just, I mean, really, you feel like that's the top of the mountain, but we're still going here, man.
I have another story. I have a related story to what you were just saying about how the Supreme Court is, they just do what they want when they're in control. It's a political organization, but every organization is political because there's no such thing as no politics, because being apolitical is nothing more than the politics of those who are already on top.
I agree with you, but just to have a qualifier though, like we're talking about degrees, and it's one thing to say, yes, nobody is purely objective. That's impossible, right? We all have some biases that creep in. It's impossible to say that anything is just purely, strictly objective. But there is a difference between interpreting the law in as nonpartisan a manner as possible and just being a political circus, and the Supreme Court is the latter. You're talking extremes.
I would actually say that interpreting it in as a mundane way as possible or not political way as possible is simply another form of politics. It's not apolitical. It's politics that are closer, that are farther away from that extreme. Well, I generally agree with you, but there is no
apolitical, but it's doing your job as a judge.
Right.
I mean, being a judge is political in essence. So yeah, I agree with you.
But not being political in that way is really standing against the politics of those on top, which in its own way is political.
I guess. I mean, yeah, sure.
But we're close. I mean, we generally agree, but that is an important subtlety, I think. But what I wanted to say was about the Supreme Court being political. There's a great story about Powell, the Powell memo, basically the blueprint for neoliberalism. Jerome Powell, is that his name? I think Powell. He became a Supreme Court.
Okay, you're not thinking Colin.
No. He became a
Okay.
Supreme Court justice, and he wrote the Powell memo in the early 70s or late 60s, and it was basically the blueprint for neoliberalism. It's a 30-page document. It's really very interesting. So they made him into Supreme Court justice before they so-called, at least the public, told the public that he wrote this memo. And so he ruled. I read a book called Racial Taxation. I had a great interview with the author of this book, and it's all about how taxation is used as a weapon against the poor and is supported by the Supreme Court throughout history. And its focus is on education in particular. And so Powell wrote the, what do you call it? All the justices voted for something, and then they have dissents. And Powell wrote the document for the people who voted, against this ruling, the majority ruling. And so what he did was they ruled against education being a right of American for the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment is equal protection under the law, and education is a human right, which is under equal protection of the law. Jerome Powell led a majority decision at the Supreme Court in early 70s, whatever, that no, education is no longer a human right under the 14th Amendment. Why? Because we can't descend into communism. So he ignored precedents, and he was so fearful of the federal government getting involved in education, of that devolving into communism, that he ignored precedents and ruled against this case of disadvantaged people trying to struggle for equal protection under the law for education. Wow. And he actually voted against it for fear of the United States descending into communism, which worked. In his version of communism, his definition of communism is helping poor people.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, and it worked. I mean, look at what happened shortly after that. I mean, it wasn't too long after that college and higher education became more and more and more unaffordable to the point where we have it at now.
That's another example of the horrible things that happen when when the wrong people are at the levers of power and they're bought off by the people who profit from, not helping poor people, not helping the rest of us.
So let's get into the literary references for this month then, because I'm pretty excited about that. You wrote a piece likening 1984, Brave New World, and kind of talking about those two things as they relate to MMT and just as they relate to power in general. There's a media theorist, Neil Postman. I don't know if you ever read him.
Heard his name. I'm not familiar.
So he's written How to Watch TV News. And of course, it's a bit dated now because he was writing, I want to say that book came out in the 80s. But anyway, he wrote that. And then his other most famous book was Amusing Ourselves to Death. And
I referenced that. I'm pretty sure I referenced that in my article in a footnote.
So in Amusing Ourselves to Death, the preface of it is he talks about how everybody wonders what's going to be the dystopian reality. 1984, and, again, these are very basic cliff notes of those two things. But 1984, which is kind of like the people are kept into submission by force, and Brave New World, the people are kept into submission through distraction, through amusement, through
inundating them with
inundation,
inundating them with pleasure in Brave New World, and inundating them with pain in 1984.
Exactly. And so he was making the claim in Amusing Ourselves to Death that Brave New World's winning by a little bit. That's the case he made back then, which at the contemporary time, it kind of made a lot of sense. Now, I feel like we kind of have a neck and neck struggle of both. I feel like they're about 50-50 right now. I feel like there's definitely a lot of Huxley in the world. There's definitely a lot of Orwell in the world too.
So did you actually read Brave New World, or were you familiar with it before you read this article?
Yes, I've read Brave New World. I've read 1984.
Oh, you read them? Wow, good for you. Okay.
You never read those books?
No, I read 1984 in school, and I don't remember too much about it except for the feeling of how sick it made me feel.
Yeah, you should give it another spin. I mean, I feel like that's one of those books that I read it when I was in high school as well and only connected so much with it. Then I read it again in grad school, and it was a much different experience for the better. And Brave New World, I actually didn't read until a little later. I read that. Maybe that was grad school too, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I've read them both, and they're both beautiful books. They're both excellent books, and I've even seen the 1984 movie, which I didn't care for all that much. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I did watch it, and again, it was just a sick
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's intense. It's intense. I mean, I just didn't like it because the book just sets such a high precedent that it was kind of hard to make it a movie. But I mean, I did not enjoy it. But yeah, I've read both those books, and I've read a lot of Postman because I referenced him a lot when I was in grad school. But I wrote a paper later where I said it sort of is a 50-50 draw right now between
Really?
Orwell
Okay.
and Huxley. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool. I didn't realize you had a background related to the piece.
yeah. No, because I would reference that preface a lot because I just thought it was so interesting, and I made the case that it's like I feel like there really is a 50-50 split going on, and like the Orwell piece that I referenced was seeing how our world treats whistleblowers. And then, the Huxley piece I referenced was just, the disaster that is cable news, because I was writing it through the lens of media ecology. But
Wow.
anyway, now that
That's cool.
everybody has fallen asleep, no, Ron references
No,
grad school stuff.
there's a
Everyone take a
really
nap.
I mean, this is once we get into this article, it will make a lot more sense. It's really cool that you have background. I did not realize that you had background very related to this piece.
Well,
That's
so
great.
unpack it for me, man. So how does that relate to MMT, and what inspired you to do that?
Inspired to write the article.
Yes.
I mean, well, I mean, I should briefly describe it before, then I'll answer that question. So I start off with 1984 is, inundating the popular. It's how the article is called, Making Thoughts Unthinkable, the Soft Power of Mainstream Economics. And it's about how you control the populace with either inundating them with pleasure or false pleasure, or inundating them with pain. And obviously in society, we do both. I see protecting privilege, and those who vote blue no matter who are, desperate to cling on to that in, the little pleasure that they have. They're afraid to lose it. And then for the final, those who are already persecuted already, they're the ones that are just going to be jailed and killed because false pleasure is not enough for them. And so, just this controlling of your populace to make thoughts unthinkable, so that people aren't even understood when they say, we should have a deficit, because that's the only way that people in the economy like me and you can actually have anything. The government is different than us. They make money, we don't. That's a fundamental difference. But most people don't know that, and it's so unknown that it's almost unthinkable. It just doesn't make sense when someone like you and I say that, because everybody says that the government's just like us, and how are you going to pay for it, and where are we going to get the taxes from and stuff. The news says it, academia says it, every powerful person says it. So it's just a way of controlling the populace, of giving them false information and not putting in the one thing that is most important. It's unthinkable. It's not even understood. And mainstream economics is a major tool of making thoughts unthinkable, of making, government has to do bold stuff if we're going to survive the, ecological Armageddon. But that is unthinkable. It's not spoken about on the news. So it's just, that was kind of all over the place, but making thoughts unthinkable. The news doesn't talk about those thoughts. Mainstream economics is a huge tool for reinforcing, for the academic justification of why media doesn't talk about it, of why we're not doing bold stuff for climate change, of why we're not giving people health care, because it supports those already on top. It is the economics of those already on top. It is an excuse to justify what they already plan to do to begin with.
And you see a little bit of both from each story, basically, each warning. I mean, let's call it for what it is. Brave New World was a warning. 1984 was a warning.
Oh, sure.
But a lot of powerful people, they read that book, or they're at least aware of that book. They saw it as an instruction manual. And
of
you
course.
see a little bit of both. I mean, why certain thoughts are unthinkable is for a number of reasons. And if you want to just look at the media, you can see the Orwell coin and the Huxley coin. The Huxley coin is like, hey, we're just all about ratings. We're all about making our advertisers happy, and certain ideas, we just do not permit those on our shows. Here's Bob with the weather. The Orwell side of the coin, we are funded by the war machine, so we're never going to see a war we don't like. If you speak out about that too much, your ass is fired. Ask Phil Donahue about that. Ask Chris Hedges about that. And this is what we permit. This is our gate. And by the way, we are going to favor policy that will crush anything that threatens us. Is independent news
demonetizing Graham?
We're going to demonetizing everybody. I mean, yeah,
but
independent media.
Graham says things that make powerful people unhappy, and that is a reason why he got demonetized. That's an example of exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, man. I mean, yeah, it's a cool article. You know, I was teaching a group of community college students once, and I referenced 1984. I was like, yeah, it's like 1984. And I was like, you guys have read that book, right? And everyone just looked at the entire classroom of kids, and they all just looked at me with blank faces. And I go, someone in this room has read 1984, right? And they're all still looking at me with blank faces. And I'm like, it's just, no one here has read 1984. And this one kid raises his hand. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. I knew someone read 1984. And he goes, Mr. Placode, you haven't seen any of the Fast and Furious movies. The other kids go, yeah. And that was when I decided I wasn't going to have children. No, just
good move.
But that was,
move.
Yeah.
I did reference Fast and Furious 7 in a footnote, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I've never seen any of those movies. I'm sure they're entertaining. But yeah, it was just such a. But hey, man, again, I mean, that's the really ironic thing there is that the fact that that room full of kids, and by the way, they weren't, I mean, they were college students. They weren't all kids. Some of them were actually older than me even. But the fact that that room full of college students in Tennessee, which, you know, maybe Tennessee's curriculum doesn't permit books like that. I don't know. But, I mean, it's almost a slightly Orwell thing that nobody read that frickin' book.
It really is.
That's a book that has been banned in certain places. I bet certain curriculums don't permit it. You know, they might let Animal Farm in, but 1984, that's a little... There might be too many questions. That book...
I mean, dealing with the climate crisis is guaranteeing that those on top will not be nearly as on top, because the rich are using so much more energy than everybody else. The just generally rich people are blowing through fossil fuels. And that doesn't even talk about the war machine, which the military is the biggest user of fossil fuels on the planet, which is a huge tool of keeping those on top. So dealing with the climate crisis at all is anathema for those who stay on top. And it's scary for the general rich people that are afraid of losing privilege because they are spoiled, because there's no limits, there's no regulation, there's no law. It's every man for himself. It's free market. And they have been taking advantage of this and just using so much and being spoiled. Just average rich people are being spoiled. And these are all of the things of this false pleasure, of inundating with false pleasure at that level, that is preventing these things from happening. That's why they're fighting it. And the war machine is, if we get off of fossil fuels, they won't have those tanks to keep themselves in power anymore. And I think like 1984 and Brave New World kind of teach the beginning of that. And so maybe they don't outright ban them, but they certainly don't push it in your face of read this book. It's very important. And MMT, it reveals uncomfortable truths. It's just all these things reveal uncomfortable truths.
Absolutely, man. I mean, yeah. And it's, it's interesting when you can relate the themes to those books to what is going on now. Because like you can take any issue and you can really see both coins being played here in a very devious way, not in a constructive educational way. Because you could say like, hey, this is what we need to take away from Orwell. This is what we need to take away from Huxley to combat climate change and to be better stewards of the earth. We can't amuse ourselves to death, because that's literally what we'll end up doing, because the climate's collapsing and we're just distracted. We can't, keep having such a forceful society because it's costing us the frickin' planet. It's time to make peace with Eurasia. Those are the lessons we could be taking. But instead, it's the other way around. Don't worry about the climate. Keep consuming. It's the economy, baby.
They
We're
don't
gonna
even
be just fine.
they don't even realize it's a problem. You know, it's one thing to, you know, I don't want you to worry. Like, my cat's dying, okay? And I have a kid, but I don't want him to worry. So I don't tell him that the cat's dying. What's worse? Not worrying about the cat dying, or that the cat is dying? You know what I mean? And climate change. I don't want people to worry about climate change, which really means I don't want to deal with the consequences of people understanding the severity of climate change. So instead of not, you know, I don't want the people to worry, so we won't tell them about climate change. What is worse? People not worrying about climate change? That might, you know, Armageddon or Armageddon. Which one's worse? Because we're going to be, you know, like our conversation a while ago about cars, you know, something's going to happen with cars, whether it's getting off of it, whether it's getting to new kinds of transportation. Obviously, something is going to happen because getting off of fossil fuels is a critical thing. And there is a cascade of consequences that happen when we do that. And we're going to make those decisions because we're going to be getting off of fossil fuels at some point. But are we going to make those decisions and have that difficult conversation before crisis happens? Before it's a panic? Or are we going to wait until it's a panic and then have those conversations? Which one of those scenarios is going to be more productive for, you know, the future of civilization? I mean, obviously, we need to have extremely difficult conversations and probably battles and fights and you know, to spoil people away from things that they can't do anymore. And
Well,
we are not having
the incentives. I mean, you know, and yeah,
we need
we've had
to
this
make things
conversation.
illegal. Yeah, I mean, we need to.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need to take away. I mean, if we put a finish line, if we said fossil fuels are done by insert year, and it's a reasonable year, it's not like 2050, which is just kicking the can down the hill, but it's 2025, it's 2030. You
and even
say,
if it's
like,
not,
there's the finish line, and that's it. There's no asterisks. Be like, that's fucking it. Real
right.
quickly, you're gonna start.
Then we will start having
really quick.
Then we will start having those very difficult conversations. What do we do about fossil fuel employees? What do we do about mechanics? What do we do with transportation? Something that's big is going to happen.
I think all the solutions are out there. The incentives just aren't. I think that
exactly
all the solutions are out there, and really, it's just a bunch of Wall Street hedgers who no one wants to give up the short-term gains.
But my point,
no one wants to let go of their short-term gains, so you have to make them. You have to say, well, you have to now.
I agree with you. I agree with you. My point is that we are going to have these conversations one way or the other. The question is, will we have it before it is too late, or will we have them after it is too late? And then we're going to have the extra element of not just these difficult issues, but also the panic. And then things are not going to be going well because people will not be rational. They will be fighting over things as opposed to making decisions about things. And that's what the reason I said this is because of you were saying, you know, news doesn't bring up climate change. This is the I don't want you to worry philosophy of instead of telling them the reality so they don't worry and have the consequences of that, they just won't tell them the reality at all.
Well, yeah, and that's like the Huxley side of the coin, where it's just like, hey, look over here. The other side of that coin, when you're staying with climate change, and the Orwell side of it, is what you see at DAPL, what you see at you know, climate activists being arrested when they're protesting at the White House, when they're cracking the heads of peaceful protesters who are just trying to protect their water. That's the Orwell side of it. And that Orwell side is very there. And when they persecute journalists for uncovering inconvenient truths.
Yep.
I mean, Amy Schlossberg at DAPL, I mean, she was facing all kinds of jail counts. You know, when they make it harder for journalists to cover stuff on the ground because you can't do that if you're with
what Obama did at DAPL was really like the final nail in the coffin with him, as far as I'm concerned. That was when the soldiers or the former veterans, when the veterans went to DAPL and to support them because of all the brutalizing that was going on.
Obama wanted everyone to have a beer together. Obama,
right?
Hey,
and then he did the permit, which he knew
cracking the heads. People who are cracking the heads of people who just want clean water. Y'all should have a beer. Meet midway. How about
he did the
dirty water and they just break your knees? How about that? We'll meet midway.
And he did the permit The day after they got there, he did the permit. Okay, it's done. We're done with this pipeline. Here, you win, knowing that Trump was going to overturn it 3 months later. Disgusting. That was just so disgusting to me.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, man. It has not gotten any better. It has actually gotten worse. So, yeah, Huxley or Orwell, I feel like they're neck and neck. Jeff, where can people go to learn more about you?
Activist MMT on Twitter and on Facebook. And if you would like to support me, I have my whole podcast, 120 episodes, 130 episodes now. If you would like to support my show, please consider patreon.com/activistmmt.
All right, man. Thanks for being here. I will see you next month.
You too. Thanks so much. I would like to, just a minor request, please consider putting the link to the article into the description.
Will do. All right. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it. See you later.
See you next month. Peace. Jeff Epstein, Activist MMT. Check it out. That's our MMT segment for the month. Guys, before we get out of here, tour dates. I got them. RonPlacone.com. First of all, my dates in Iceland have been announced. I'll be part of the Reykjavik Fringe Festival. You can get those. Let me see that website again so I can plug it. Tickets aren't available yet. But as soon as they're available, you can get those tickets at rvkfringe.is. That's rvkfringe.is. My show will be on June 28th. That's a Tuesday, June 28th at 10:30 p.m. and then July 3rd at 6 p.m. So you got 2 different dates to choose from in Reykjavik, part of the Reykjavik Fringe Festival. So I'll see you in Iceland. I can't wait for it. So those dates, mark your calendars, and I'll be sharing more info as it's available. And the Northwest, get your tickets now. July 28th, Portland, Oregon. July 3rd or July 29th, Seattle, Washington. July 30th, Vancouver, British Columbia. And shout out to Rory. Hey, Ron, I'll see you with Graham in Vancouver on Saturday, July 30th. I'll see you there, Rory. Stoked for it. Those Northwest dates are myself and Graham Elwood. Again, that's July 28th, Portland, July 29th, Seattle, July 30th, Vancouver. Me and Graham Elwood hitting the road in the Northwest for one weekend. Get your tickets, RonPlacone.com. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this month's MMT segment. We do it every MMT time. It's MMT time. And there's going to be a tea bag or like a teacup, some kind of tea something. Oh, man. Brilliant. All right. I'll see you guys on Thursday for the headline show of the week. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love, and a general strike.